unimagined order. The food surpluses produced by peasants, coupled with new transportation technology, eventually enable more and more people to cram together, first into large villages, then into towns, and finally into cities, all of them joined together by new kingdoms and commercial networks. Yet, in order to take advantage of the new opportunities, food surpluses and improved transportation were not enough. The mere fact that one can feed 1,000 people in the same town or 1 million people in the same kingdom does not guarantee that they can agree how to divide the land and water, how to settle disputes and conflicts, and how to act in times of drought or war. And if no agreement can be reached, strife spreads, even if the storehouses are bulging. It was not food shortages that caused most of history's wars and revolutions. The French Revolution was spearheaded by affluent lawyers, not by famished peasants. The Roman Republic reached the height of its power in the 1st century BC when treasure fleets from throughout the Mediterranean enriched the Romans beyond their ancestors' wildest dreams. Yet it was at the moment of maximum influence that the Roman political order collapsed into a series of deadly civil wars. Yugoslavia in 1991 had more than enough resources to feed all its inhabitants and still disintegrated into terrible bloodbath. The problem at the root of such calamities is that humans evolved for millions of years in small bands of a few dozen individuals. The handful of millennia separating the agricultural revolution from the appearance of cities, kingdoms, and empires were not enough time to allow an instinct for mass cooperation to evolve. Despite the lack of such biological instincts, during the foraging era, hundreds of people were able to cooperate thanks to their shared needs. However, this cooperation was loose and limited. Every sapiens band continued to run its life independently and to provide for most of its own needs. An archaic sociologist living 20,000 years ago, who had no knowledge of events following the agricultural revolution, might well have concluded that mythology had a fairly limited scope. Stories about ancestral spirits and tribal totems were strong enough to enable 500 people to trade seashells, celebrate the art festival, and join forces to wipe out a Neanderthal band, but no more than that. Mythology, the ancient socialists would have thought, could not possibly enable millions of strangers to cooperate on a daily basis. But that turned out to be wrong. Myths, it transpired, are stronger than anyone could have imagined. When the agricultural revolution opened opportunities for the creation of crowded cities and mighty empires, people invented stories about great gods, motherlands, and giant stock companies to provide the needed social links. While human evolution was crawling at its usual snail's pace, the human imagination was building astounding networks of mass cooperation unlike any other ever seen on Earth. Around 8500 BC, the largest settlements in the world were villages such as Jericho, which contained a few hundred individuals. By 7000 BC, the towns of Catahook in Anatolia numbered between 5,000 and 10,000 individuals. It might well have been the world's biggest settlement at the time. During the 5th and 4th millennia BC, cities with tens of thousands of inhabitants sprouted in the Fertile Crescent, and each of these held sway over many nearby villages. In 3100 BC, the entire lower Nile Valley was united into the first Egyptian kingdom. Its pharaohs ruled thousands of square kilometers and hundreds of thousands of people. Around 2250 BC, Sargon the Great forged the first empire, the Akkadian. It boasted over 1 million subjects and standing army of 5,400 soldiers. Between 1000 BC and 500 BC, the first mega empires appeared in the Middle East. The late Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, and the Persian Empire. They ruled over millions of subjects and commanded tens of thousands of soldiers. In 221 BC, the Qin dynasty, the Qin dynasty united China, and shortly afterwards Rome united Mediterranean basin. Taxes levied on 40 million Qin subjects paid for a standing army of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, a complex bureaucracy that employed more than 100,000 officials. The Roman Empire at its zenith collected taxes from up to 100 million subjects. This revenue financed a standing army of 250,000 to 500,000 soldiers, a road network still in use 1,500 years later, and theaters and amphitheaters that host spectacles to these days. Impressive, no doubt, but we mustn't harbor rosy illusions about mass cooperation networks operating in Pharaonic Egypt or the Roman Empire. Cooperation sounds very altruistic, but it's not only voluntary and seldom egalitarian. Most human cooperation networks have been geared towards oppression and exploitation. The peasant pay for burgeoning cooperation networks with their precious food surpluses, despairing when the tax collector wiped out an entire year of hard labor with a single stroke of his imperial pen. The famed Roman amphitheaters were often built by slaves so that the wealthy and idle Romans could watch other slaves engage in vicious gladiatorial combat. Even prisons and concentration camps are cooperation networks and can function only because thousands of strangers somehow manage to coordinate their actions.